Good morning to all. So in the last class we discussed about the chapter Introduction to Hardware, just an introduction to that chapter. So in this class we have a detailed overview regarding the basic organization of a computer system. So we already discussed about the five major aspects of this computer organization, in which input, then store, processing, output and control. So with these functions a computer perform in a very good manner. So the basic organization of a computer system, it is the major topic that we should focus on. So we can divide this topic into four major subtopics, which includes the input unit, then the output unit, then memory, and finally we have the central processing unit. So these are the basics of a computer, the organization of a computer, how a computer performs. So the first part is the input unit. So the input unit in which the data and instructions must enter a computer system before the computer can perform any computation on the supplied data, and the input unit that links a computer with its external environment perform this task, and also data and instructions enter a computer through an input unit in a form that depends upon the input device used for it. So this means that the input is the kind of instructions that we give to the computer, and with that instructions the computer may perform and we get the output as a result. So this is the basics of the computer function, in which we give the instruction to the computer, and with that instructions computer may perform with the operations, and we will get the result on the screen. So this is the basics of the computer function. And so we have the input unit. So in the last class we discussed about the input, in which it is the process of entering data and instructions into the computer system. So this is the basics of the input unit, and in which we can enter the data and also the instructions, and after entering that the computer may perform the computation. So the computation means the performs or the process that the computer took place in the especially in the CPU, with the help of the CPU. So the computation, which is very related to the term computer that we discussed in the first module, in which the basic function of a computer is to calculate or to compute. So here we have the computation method or a computation kind of process while we discuss the topic input unit. So while we give this kind of data and instructions to the computer can perform any this kind of process or this kind of computation on the supplied data, and then the input unit that links a computer with its external environment perform this task. So with the help of these external environments, which means the kind of the hardware, the basic hardware, and with the help of these components it may perform this kind of process, and we will get the result on the screen. So this is the fundamental of the input process in the computer, and the data and instructions enter a computer through an input unit in a form that depends upon the input device used. So for example, if we use the input device, for example it may be the keyboard, and we enter the data with the help of this keyboard into the computer, and we get the result on the screen as in a very good manner with the help of this word processing software or something else. So this means that with the help of any input device we can enter or we can give the data to the computer, and we get the result from that. So the data and instructions enter in a computer through an input system or input unit in a form that depends upon the input device which is used. For example, data can be entered using a keyboard in a manner similar to typing, and this differs from a way in which data is entered through a scanner, and also another type of input device. So we just discussed about the keyboard, which is a kind of input device in which we will enter the data with the help of this keyboard into the computer. And we also have another kind of input device, which is the scanner. So with the help of the scanner, we can scan the documents, images, and we can process it with the help of this computer. So it is also a kind of input aspect of the computer, but it is quite different from the keyboard. So each kind of these input devices have its own function, its own separate functions. So this is the basics, or this is the change in the input unit. I will discuss all this kind of input units. And however, a computer's memory is designed to accept input in binary code. So this binary code is regarded as a kind of computer language in which all the data that we entered in the computer is processed as a kind of this binary code, and then it is converted into the input and the signals of the input process, and we get as after processing we get the output as a result. So this is the basics, or the change in this kind of input to output change while we discuss the function of the computer. So a computer's memory is designed to accept the input in binary code, and hence all the input devices must transform the input signal to binary codes, and these units called the input interfaces accomplish this transformation. And also the input interfaces match the unique physical or the electrical characteristics of the input devices to the requirements of a computer system. So this means that all the data or all the input functions that we enter into the computer, it is just converted into the binary code in order to process the data with the help of this kind of control unit, and after processing we get the kind of the result in the screen. So that's the basics, or the change in the transformation in these kind of signals from the normal signals to the input signals to the binary code, and also after that we get the result as after processing all these kind of signals. So with that, this is the basic functionality of the input unit, how it performs, in which while we enter the data or while we give the data through the forms of this keyboard or mouse and any other device, scanner and any other input devices, we get the processed data with the help of this kind of functionality or this kind of process. So this is the basics, or the basic functionality of this input unit. And in short, an input unit performs the following functions. So basically there are three major functions of the input unit. The first one is it accepts or reads the instructions and data from outside the world. So this means that it accepts all kind of data in which we entered to the computer. So this is the first function in which it accepts all the instructions of data from the outside the world. Then second one is it converts these instructions and data in computer which is acceptable form. So after accepting all these kind of data, the computer with the help of this central processing unit and also the ALU, so with the help of this kind of this processing unit, it converts it to the binary code. So second function is it converts these instructions and data in computer acceptable form. So the acceptable form of the computer is the binary code. So in which all the data is converted into this kind of binary code. So this is the second function. And thirdly, we have the final or the result of this kind of actions in which it supplies the converted instructions and data to the computer system for further processing, in which all these kind of process or all this kind of data is given, or it is supplied to this kind of computer system for further processing. So after this further processing, we get the result as a output. So this is the basic functions in a very brief manner, or through this kind of three steps. So the first step is that it accepts all these kind of data and instructions to the computer, and after accepting handling all these kind of instructions, the computer converts this data into the computer acceptable form, which is the binary code, and after that it supplies this kind of converted instructions or this kind of binary codes to the computer system for the further processing. So this processing is done through the aspects of this kind of processing unit and also the control unit, in which the CPU is the basics of this kind of actions into in which it converts this kind of data, and also after all this kind of process it gives the data as the output in a very good manner that we can read all this kind of data. So this means that this is the basics or the basic function of this input actions or the input unit in a very brief manner, in which these three steps is very important that we should focus on. Then a computer system may have one or more of the following input devices depending upon its type, size, use, and also this kind of it may vary on according to our need. So the basics of this kind of input devices which must include in a computer, they are the keyboard, then mouse, and also this kind of storage devices like the magnetic tab and the hard disk, magnetic disk, then the thumb drive or the flash drive. So these are the major aspects of a computer in which it can store the data into this kind of devices. So basically in a common computer, on a common desktop or a laptop, there will be a dedicated slot or dedicated space to store this kind of data into the computer. So it is called as this kind of computer storage or the hard disk of the computer. So beyond that we can add this kind of data into this kind of external hard disk or the pen drives or the memory cards like that. So we can store the data in this kind of devices too. So basically for a computer to perform this kind of actions, there should be a kind of this keyboard and mouse, and also to store the data there should be a kind of device, whether it is a hard disk or pen drive, anything like that. So this is the basics of the input devices. Then we have another the extended versions of these input devices, which includes the scanner, then the OMR, OCR, which means that it can read this kind of codes with the help of these devices, then the digitizers, touch screen, and voice recognition system like that. So all these kind of input devices is related to this kind of action, which means the input unit. So this is the basics of the input unit, in which this is the first point, first step in the kind of this computer organization. So we just discussed about the input unit, in which how a input unit in a computer it performs the actions of this kind of or the functions of this kind of input unit in a very detailed manner. So basically we have the three major steps in which how a computer accepts the kind of input data and how it process, and also finally we have the output as a result of this kind of actions. So the first one was it accepts or reads the instructions and data from outside the world. Second step was it converts this kind of all these kind of instructions and data into the computer acceptable form. And third one was regarding it supplies this kind of converted this kind of data to the processing unit or the computer system for the further processing, and later we get the output as a result. So the output is another major aspect of the computer organization or the computer function. So the first part is the input unit, then the second point is the output unit. So we just discuss we are going to just discuss about the output unit in a very detailed manner. So this is regarding the input unit in a very good manner. So the output unit is the we already discussed in the last class about the output, in which the process of producing the useful information or results for the user, such as a print report or visual display, etc. So the kind of the result that we get through the computer with the help of this any kind of these devices, we get the result. So these results is the kind of action done by the computer, in which by processing the input, all the input actions, and then it gives the result as the output. So this is the basics of this input output system. So now we are going to discuss about the output unit. So the output unit performs the reverse operation of that an input unit, in which it is just a opposite to the functions of the input unit, and also it supplies the information obtained from the data processing to the outside of the world, which means that we get this kind of the result in the very good manner with the help of this maybe through the visual display unit, which is the VDU, which is simply it is the screen of the computer, and also through the kind of this printable form of these documents and like that, images and like that. So this means that we get the output as the result of this kind of input actions. So the in a simple sense, it is the output is the result of the input actions, and in the while we discussing the processing type of this output actions, it is just opposite to the input actions, in which it performs this kind of conversion in a very reverse manner, just opposite to the input unit. So this is the, just a simple analysis of this topic, which is the output unit, and hence it links a computer with its external environment. As the computer works with the binary code, the results produced are also in the binary form, and therefore before supplying this result to the outside of the world, the system must convert them to the human acceptable, which is the readable form, and these kind of units are called the output interfaces. So just opposite to this kind of output actions, we just discussed about the input action, in which there is a kind of input interface, in which all the kind of this data or the instructions was converted into the binary code in order to perform all this process in the computer system. So here all this kind of binary code is then converted into the human readable, which means that we can read all this kind of data by converting this kind of binary to the human readable form, acceptable form. So here we have just a opposite to the input actions. So as computers works with this kind of binary code, the result produced are also in the binary code. So we cannot read this kind of binary form, in which it may be in the form of this digits 101 like that. So we cannot read all these kind of binary form, so that the computer, before supplying to this kind of output result or to the screen of the computer, it just convert this kind of binary codes into the human acceptable, which means that we can read all this kind of processed data, it converts to this kind of readable form, and these kind of actions or this kind of performs in a kind of this unit, which is called the output interfaces. So in the first topic it was the input interfaces, in which it converts all the normal kind of this data to the binary code, and it is called as by the term input interfaces. And this action, basically this action of converting the symbol code or the readable code to the binary code, which was the input interfaces, and here we have the output interfaces, in which the binary code is then converted after all the kind of these processes, it is just converted into the human readable form. So this kind of actions is called as the output interfaces, and it accomplishes this kind of task, which means the output interfaces. And the output interfaces match the unique physical or the electrical characteristics of the output devices to the requirements of an external environment. So with the help of this kind of external environment, it just converts all these kind of actions, in which we can get this result in a very good manner, maybe on the screen or as a printable form or like something like that. So the result that we get is should be this kind of readable and also the acceptable form of these computer functions. So this means that there is a kind of change in which it just convert the normal to the binary, and after processing, after all this kind of process, it then convert into from the binary to the normal mode. So this is the input and output aspect of the computer, in which in the first segment it just convert to the binary, then the second segment, which is the output function, it will just convert this kind of binary into the readable form. So this is the basics of the any forms of these computer equipments in which all these devices run on this basic method. So we should focus on this basic method as a kind of function of the computer, in which without these actions we didn't get this kind of result as in a very good form. So this is the basics of these kind of computer functions, and in short we can call this output unit, we can go through this kind of 3 steps in a very simple manner. So the functions of the output unit can be done through this kind of 3 steps. So the first step is it accepts the result produced by the computer, which are in coded form and hence cannot be easily understood by us. Then the second step is it converts this coded result to the human acceptable or the readable form. Then the third step, it supplies the converted result to the outside world. So here we have the basic 3 functions of the output unit, in which it accepts, the computer accepts all these kind of produced result, which will be in this kind of binary code, and then we cannot read it in a very proper sense, in which it may be in this kind of binary codes. So that the second step is that it converts this kind of coded result to the human acceptable or the readable form or the normal form, in which we can read all these kind of result in a very good manner. So this is the second step. And the final step is that it supplies the converted result to the outside world. So after all this kind of conversion and all this kind of process, it gives the result as a output result in the screen, on the screen, or as a printable or any kind of this kind of result. So this is the basics of this output function in a very simple manner. So we have another 3 steps regarding the output unit. So go through these 3 steps in a very good manner, in which we get a clear idea regarding the output functionality. So the input functionality is just opposite to this kind of output functionality, but all these 3 first we discussed about the input unit in the 3 steps, and then we discussed about the output unit, and also through the 3 basic functions of the output unit. So these 3 steps is very important. So we should focus on these 3 steps, and it is very necessary in order to focus on this kind of actions, in which this is the basic functionality of a computer, in which the input unit and also the output unit, and also we have the kind of this processing unit. It is very important aspect of the computer, in which how this kind of process is done by the computer with the help of this ALU and also the CPU. So this kind of action will be discussing the later topics after discussing the topic memory. So regarding the input unit and output unit, these 2 actions are very important, like the 2 sides of a coin. Without this kind of input and output, we cannot get the result, or we cannot perform any task with the help of this computer or any kind of this devices, which is based on this kind of computer technology. So the output devices include the visual display. This is the major one of the important aspect of the output unit, which is the visual display unit, or simply we can call it as the monitor or the screen of the computer. So the VDU, then the printers, then the plotters, then screen image projectors, storage devices, all these kind of storage devices, and the voice response systems. So all these kind of devices should be included in the topic output devices. So we will discuss the input devices and the output devices in the later classes. So just to know about the basics of these output devices, we should focus on all these topics. So this is regarding the output and also the input functions of the computer. So it is very important in which we should focus on these basic functions of the computer. Then we have the third topic, which is the memory. So we just discussed about the input unit, then the output unit, and now we have the memory. So the memory, what do we mean by the term the memory? The memory means it is the kind of the space for the storing the data in the computer, and we can we can define this kind of action like that: saving the data and instruction to make them readily and also in a very good manner to available for the initial or additional processing whenever required. So basically the memory means to store all this kind of data to the computer or any kind of these mobile devices and like that. So we can store the data with the help of this kind of memory devices. So the memory or the storage devices means the hard disk, then the pen drives, flash drives, or the cloud storage. All these kind of storage devices or storage platforms, it helps to store our data in a very secured manner, but also we have the threat of this kind of viruses and any kind of these harmful applications. So we should make all this kind of data in a very safe place, to store this kind of the data in a safe place that we should focus on. So regarding the memory, the data and instructions entered into the computer system through the input unit have to be stored inside the computer before actual processing starts. Similarly, the results produced by a computer after processing have be kept somewhere inside the computer system before being passed on to an output unit. Moreover, the intermediate results produced by the computer must also be preserved for ongoing processing. Storage unit of a computer system caters to all these needs. It provides space for storing data and instructions, intermediate result, and also the results for the output. So this is the function of the memory, in which this provides, or the storage devices or any kind of this platform, it provides the space for storing the data and instructions and also the intermediate result, which means the result processed by the computer, then the result for the output. So all these kind of data and instructions and all the documents, media files, any kind of these data files should be stored in this kind of storage devices. So together we can call this action as the space for the memory or storage of the computer. So regarding the storage, we can go through the basics of these functions of these storage types or the memory types of the computer, in which the storage unit can store or it can hold these kind of basically the three major points regarding the memory. The first one is it can the data and instructions required for the processing, it can carry all this kind of data and received from the input devices with the help of these input devices. So this is the first point. Second one is that it can intermediate the results for the processing. So all the results for the processing can be carried in this kind of storage devices. Then last we have the final results for the processing before they are released to. So for example, if we edit a video or a photo, so we can store it in our computer or mobile device or any other external kind of these removable devices, and before producing or before sharing it, and while we share, we can share these kind of files with the help of this from this kind of these storage devices. So this is the best example for that. So these storage devices or the memory platform of the computer or any kind of these devices, it can carry the data and instructions required for processing. So it is the part of this input processing. Then after that, it can intermediate the result of processing. So it can carry all these kind of results for the processing. After the kind of this all this kind of process, it can carry the data in the memory or the storage devices. Then it can find the results for processing, and also it can store this kind of produced result in this kind of storage devices. So this is the basic three functions of the memory, in which how it perform in So we can divide the storage devices into two categories. The first one is the primary storage, second one is the secondary storage. So the primary storage is known by the name main memory. So it is a major kind of this storage aspect of a computer, in which it is used to hold the pieces of the program instructions and data, then the intermediate result of processing, and recently produced results of these kind of jobs on which the computer is currently working. So basically the main memory or the primary memory storage of the computer, it is very essential to run all these kind of actions, especially to run this kind of program instructions and data, and also the intermediate results of processing, then the recently produced result of these kind of jobs. So the best example for the primary storage is the RAM. So RAM, the random access memory. So this is the primary storage of the example for the primary storage of the computer, and the basic function of this primary storage, or the definition of the primary storage of the computer, is that it is also known by the name as the main memory. Then it is used to hold the pieces of program instructions and data, intermediate result of processing, and recently produced result of these jobs on which the computer is currently working. So this is the definition to the primary storage. Then these pieces of information are represented electronically in the main memory chip's circuitry, and while it remains in the main memory, central processing unit can access it directly at a very fast speed. So this is just very related to the topic, the processing unit, or the primary storage, or the kind of these actions is very related to the processing unit, in which all this kind of process, especially to program the instructions and data, then intermediate the result of this kind of process, then to produce this kind of result. So in all these kind of these functions of the computer, primary storage is very important. So without that, we cannot perform all this kind of the process in a very good manner. So this is very also it is related to the topic, the control unit, or the central processing unit. So it can access it directly at a very fast speed. Also the primary storage is also related to the speed of a computer, in which if a computer, or for example for if a mobile device, the storage of the RAM is much higher than any kind of these basics of the computer, it may perform in a very good manner. So the memory level, or the primary storage of the computer or any kind of device, it is very important, and to perform all this kind of process, it may obtain this kind of data in a very good manner. So the primary storage is very important in order to run the computer in a very fast speed. Then however, the primary memory can hold the information only while computer system is powered on, and also as soon as the computer system switches off or reset, the information held in primary storage is erased. So this storage, or the memory which is related to the primary storage, it is temporary. So after shutting down the computer, or powering off the computer, or switching off the mobile device, all these kind of process data will be erased. So this means that it is very temporary memory. This kind of, it is all this kind of memory related to the primary storage, it is temporary. Then as soon as the computer system switches off or reset, the information held in the primary storage is erased. So this is the best example for the RAM, in which all this process is occurred through the kind of this RAM, but after switching off or powering off these kind of devices, all these processed data, or this kind of memory will be erased in a very good manner. So this means that moreover, the primary storage, which is normally as the limited storage capacity, because it is very expensive, and also the primary storage of a modern computer system is made of the semiconductor devices. So the primary storage of the modern computer system is made up of the semiconductor devices. So all these kind of devices is especially the primary storage devices which uses the semiconductor kind of types of material in order to make this kind of primary storage devices. So the basically we can go through the main features of these primary storage devices. So basically we have four major topics. They are the primary storage devices are used to hold the running program instructions. So it can hold this kind of running program kind of this memory and all these kind of actions. Then it is used to hold the data, the intermediate result, and also the results of ongoing processing of jobs. So it can hold the data that especially the processing data, then the intermediate result, the result produced after the all these kind of performance or the process, then the result of ongoing program processing jobs. So this means that it can carry the processing data in a very good manner with the help of these primary storage devices. And thirdly, it provides the fast in operation, the speed of the operation, and also small capacity, but it is expensive. So maybe the rate of this kind of devices, especially for if we focus on the topic the RAM, 1 GB RAM basically around 1000 or 2000 rupees to purchase a kind of 1 GB RAM. Instead we can purchase 64 GB memory card or the kind of this pen drives around in the same cost. So this means that the secondary storage devices is less expensive than the primary storage devices, in which one is the material which is used to make this kind of primary storage devices. Secondly, it is the very essential part of the every computer or every devices, so it is very expensive. So basically it helps to operate all these kind of actions in a very speedy manner, in a very fast manner. Then the small capacity of this kind of primary storage devices, and also it should be expensive while we compare this normal kind of these secondary storage devices. Then volatile. So volatile means it loses the data on power dissipation, which means that after switching off the computer or after powering off the computer, all the data, all the processed data should be erased. So these kind of actions together we can call it as a volatile kind of actions. So volatile memory is also another name to the primary storage devices, in which without the power or after shutting down the power, all the stored data, especially it store only the processing data. So all these processing data and processed data to perform a kind of action in a computer, it should be erased with while we switching off or powering off any kind of these devices. So that's regarding the primary storage, and we have the secondary storage. So we will be focusing this topic, the secondary storage, in the next class. So today we just discussed about the topics: the input unit, basically the input unit, then the output unit, and also the memory. So memory, we can divide this topic into primary storage and secondary storage. So today we only focused on the topic primary storage. So in the next class we will be focusing on the secondary storage, and also we have the topic which is the central processing unit, in which how all these kind of actions and process should be done with the help of these kind of CPU and all these kind of processes. So we will be focusing on this in the next class, and also the input devices in a very detailed manner. So that's for today. Thank you. Happy learning.